Well, a lobby group claims many pupils in Limpopo still haven't received textbooks almost halfway through the year. Section 27 is taking the Basic Education Minister as well as the Limpopo Education Department to court. It says pupils in grades 1 to 3 as well as grade R and grade 10 still don't have textbooks. Joining me now is Section 27 attorney Nikki Steyn. Evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. So how many schools are affected by this?
It's all of the schools in Limpopo that have not received textbooks for this year. Our understanding is that the Limpopo Department of Education never placed orders with the publishers. The orders should have been placed in November last year before the province was placed under administration or before the department was placed under administration. And once the Section 100 intervention took place, the National Department of Basic Education still failed to place any orders for textbooks.
If we're talking about all the schools in that province, how many children are we talking about?
Talking about tens of thousands of children, and in very deep rural areas, from very vulnerable communities, many of them from child-headed households, unemployed parents, so they really are the poorest of the poor.
And what reasons or explanations have been given by the department for this delay?
One of our difficulties is that very few reasons have been given by the department for the delay. Section 27 started to follow up on the issue in January this year, where an undertaking was given that textbooks would be delivered in March. They failed to do so. In March, we met with the head of the intervention team, who informed us that there had been problems, did not go into details because he promised us that textbooks would be delivered by mid-April at the absolute latest. That undertaking was, of course, not honoured, and we were then forced to go to court rather than wait for further promises from the department.
From what you can deduce, is this problem linked to the fact that that education was taken over by national government?
I believe that it has been affected, but it should not be. Orders are placed from August or September of each year. And by November at the latest. The schools that we have spoken to filled in their requisition forms in November, which was before the intervention. And so by the time the national department came in, the provincial department should have placed its orders with publishers, which means the textbooks could have been delivered in January.
Is it textbooks across the board or for specific subjects that are missing?
The grades affected, which is grades R1, 2, 3 and 10, have all started the new CAPS syllabus this year. And that applies to all of their subjects. So it's all of those subjects for those particular grades that have absolutely no textbooks at all.
So in effect, over the past 5 months, very little quality schooling has been taking place in Limpopo.
That's correct. There are some schools that are trying to mitigate the loss of time and the lack of textbooks. But that is made difficult by the fact that there are other problems within the department. For example, their day-to-day funding is not being given to them. They don't have enough funds to photocopy worksheets, toner for their photostat machines. So it is very difficult for them to make do as expected.
So what kind of relief are you seeking from the courts?
We're seeking two major actions by the department. The first is an order directing them to deliver textbooks urgently and by no later than the end of May. And what that would require is for them to place their orders with the publishers and to have the books delivered to all of the schools by the end of May. The second part of the relief is for them to come up with a catch-up program. The schools have already gone through almost half of the academic year, and they'll need to put something in place, such as homework camps, weekend classes, after-school classes, so that learners can catch up on the curriculum that they have lost over the last few months.
Given what's happened, do you think that department has the capacity to roll out such a catch-up session, even if the courts were to find in your favour?
It has been done before. A catch-up plan was implemented during the World Cup in 2010, after the public service strikes in 2010, which lasted for a very long time, as well as in 2007. So it is definitely something that's doable and just relies on the will to solve this.
You go to court on Monday. How long do you think this process will take?
We are going to court on Monday and are hoping for the court to give us an order as soon as possible. And we'll have to take it from there.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Section 27's Nikki Steyn. We'll get the Education Department's response just after 8 o'clock here on Newsnight.
Now, landmark court ruling has given hope to thousands of Limpopo pupils. The Basic Education Department has been found guilty of human rights violations for failing to provide textbooks to over 5,000 schools in the province. It's been given 2 weeks to start providing learning materials or face more action.
Over 5,000 schools. These pupils have been failed by the system. They've had no textbooks since the start of the year. The province's education department was placed under administration last December. Despite this, textbooks were not ordered on time. An NGO, Section 27, took the National Department of Education to court. It says the ruling is a victory for schools countrywide.
The failure to deliver textbooks on time to students at the start of the school year is unlawful and is a violation of the right to basic education.
The National Association of School Governing Bodies also joined the fight for quality education.
When we talk quality of learning and teaching, then people will start now to take it very seriously, because textbooks is a component of learning and teaching.
Judge Jody Colapan ruled that every school in Limpopo should have brand new textbooks by no later than the 15th of June. He also ordered that both the national and provincial departments put in place a catch-up plan as a remedy for its delay in supplying reading material. The department has been ordered to give the court a monthly update of its catch-up plan or face further court action by Section 27. Leranza Tamba, E-News, Pretoria.
Well, the Basic Education Department joins us after 6:30 this evening, but some instant reaction now from Section 27. Attorney Nikki Steyn, good evening to you and a very warm welcome. No doubt you are pleased with the outcome, but let me suggest to you the devil is in the detail in the catch-up plan itself.
That's right. I think it is a huge step to get the order that we got today from the judge. We need to ensure, though, that it is implemented effectively, and particularly the catch-up plan. The fact of delivery of textbooks is great, but we need to compensate the learners for half a year of not having these books. So we need the department to take seriously their obligations regarding catch-up.
Let's talk about the consequences to the pupils in just a moment, but in terms of this plan, no doubt the Education Department has one, or is busy formulating one as we speak. What should it entail?
The court held this morning, and we agree with what they held, that it should entail revision classes, extra class time, on the basis that what's happened is that learners haven't missed out on specific sections of work. Rather, the quality of teaching and learning has been below what it should be because they haven't had textbooks to teach from or learn from. And so it involves revision classes, it involves a general province-wide program, and any other remedial steps that they identify along the way. So the department has asked schools for their input as to what the consequences were and what needs to be done.
Given the parlous state of education in the province, are you confident that the department can actually deliver on this?
We will be watching them very closely. This is an obligation in terms of the court order which falls on both the provincial department and the national department. They are required to submit their plan to court, and we will analyse that very closely, as will the court. And they are required to submit monthly reports, and any case of non-compliance with those reports will be followed up on.
Since this judgment, have you had any dialogue, any conversation with the Basic Education Department?
We haven't, no.
So obviously, as you say, it's a situation that you'll be following very closely. Explain to us what weakness in the system allowed this situation to develop in the first place and why it had to go to court.
I think there were a lot of weaknesses in the system. I think the biggest objective factor was the Section 100 intervention. The province should have ordered textbooks by November last year. By the time it was placed under administration in terms of Section 100, everything should have been done. When National came in and saw that nothing had been done with regard to the procurement and delivery of textbooks, that should have been one of the first steps that they took. And so the weakness seems to be on both the national and provincial level. But at the same time, since then, there have been numerous undertakings to deliver textbooks, both in the media and to us, and none of those have been honoured. And it's not entirely clear why. They are blaming, to some extent, the problems in the province. They say that 2 billion rand has disappeared from the department, that there have been problems with procurement processes. But for us, although to some extent it's an explanation, it's most definitely not an excuse.
It's also a scandal. Do you expect heads to roll as a result of this?
It's possible. I think, it's difficult to locate exactly who's responsible and where the responsibility lies.
Why is that so difficult?
I think because there are so many actors and so many players, and in issues where there seems to be non-compliance with procurement processes, and definitely from the report of the head of the intervention team, it seems that there was some corruption involved. We need to make sure that all of those cases are, again, followed up on very closely.
Would your organisation be pursuing criminal charges?
That is something that falls beyond our scope, but to the extent that it affects education issues, we would work with partner organisations to ensure that those things are followed up on.
Would it be your belief that the province, the provincial education department, as well as the basic education minister, owes thousands of pupils and their parents an apology tonight?
Yes. I think one of the biggest problems that we've had is that there was simply no explanation of what was happening with textbooks. There was limited communication with us, but we of course aren't learners and parents in the province. And schools in the province have depended on us for communication, and I think that's one of the major difficulties.
Was there a lot of prevarication as far as the authorities were concerned? Were they putting up obstacles all the time as you tried to intervene in this crisis?
I wouldn't say that they were necessarily putting up obstacles for us. I think that, there are a lot of difficulties in the province going on, and with the intervention, I think there's a lot of finger pointing and playing the blame game. And we were caught up in some of that to some degree. I don't think there was any active trying to stop us on the textbook issue in particular.
All right, just a final question then. I noticed that Section 27 also saying that this judgment has wider implications, which would mean that there are potentially other problems of a similar nature in other areas. Is that true? If so, where?
There is definitely a similar problem in the Eastern Cape, where textbooks and I think workbooks in particular, there was a mess up with the orders there, and incorrect workbooks in incorrect languages were delivered. But I think this goes wider than textbooks and workbooks. What the court started to do today was that it started to give content to the right to a basic education, and left open the questions of whether infrastructure, school nutrition, safety and security at school could all be included in that right and in the government's constitutional obligations. So we are starting step by step to build up the right and to enforce the government's obligations against it.
Thank you very much for coming in tonight. Section 27 attorney Nikki Steyn with us here on Newsnight. Now, ANC Women's League.
The Basic Education Department has undertaken to provide textbooks to Limpopo schools by no later than mid-June. This in compliance with today's North Gauteng High Court ruling. The date was proposed by the department. Rights group Section 27 sought legal relief after the Provincial Education Department failed to provide textbooks to pupils.
Just one of the schools without textbooks since the start of the academic year. Section 27 argued this violated the right to basic education. Today, Judge Jody Collipin agreed and ruled the matter was urgent. He noted that the delivery of textbooks needed to be prioritised and ordered that textbooks be delivered by no later than the 15th of June. The single parent and litigant was overwhelmed by the judgment.
I'm very much happy just because our children now are going to receive books.
The court also ruled that the department should have to implement a remedial plan to fast-track the syllabus. That's a tall order to compress a year's work into 6 months. All grades in Limpopo are affected, but the worst hit are grades R, 1, 2, 3 and 10.
The court said we must procure, we're procuring. It says we must be finished by the 15th. We did tell the court that we'll be finished by the 15th. So there's nothing that they are saying which we had not said. So it's not a question of compliance, it's confirming what we said we were going to do.
The Provincial Education Department is currently under national administration.
Meanwhile, delivering her budget vote in Parliament, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga said a big chunk would be used to improve infrastructure. Provision of learning materials also tops the list. 54 million textbooks will be provided. 5 billion rand is allocated for infrastructure spending.
The eradication of 496 inappropriate structure nationally, the provision of basic water to 1,257 schools, the provision of basic sanitation to 868 schools, and the electrification of 878 schools.
But criticisms from the opposition benches.
The education sector, we know, is currently fraught with instability, insecurity, maladministration, union interference, and the lack of role models in many cases.
Education is lurching from crisis to crisis, and much of the time of the department is spent in crisis management and damage control.
Bring back meritorious employment and throw out of the window cronyism and nepotism. 2, let Lutuli House rethink very carefully the cadre deployment policy and assess how it affects the system.
MPs, however, supported the budget. Manelisi Tubase, SABC News, Parliament.
Despite being ordered to deliver textbooks by the end of today, some Limpopo schools are still without their material. The Basic Education Department was taken to court by an NGO over non-delivery to schools in the province. It was ordered to make deliveries to 5,000 Limpopo schools. But when pupils at one school went home today, their books had still not arrived. The department, though, says the material will be delivered by midnight. Thousands of Limpopo children have been without textbooks since the beginning of the year. The Provincial Education Department was placed under administration in December. The court also ordered the national and provincial departments to implement catch-up plans for all affected pupils. Section 27 attorney Nikki Steyn visited 3 schools in the province today and says none of them have received textbooks.
We were extremely disappointed that not one of the schools we'd visited had received its books when we visited them. But we met with the head of the intervention team yesterday afternoon, and we had a very open and honest discussion about the process that had been followed and about the process which will be followed over the next few days. He confirmed that although the deadline of midnight tonight will not be complied with, the trucks were actually leaving 3 central warehouses in Polokwane while we were talking to take the books to the district offices. And from there they would be taken to schools in all of the circuits across the province. He has instructed them to work through the night for as many nights as necessary to ensure that textbooks are delivered within the next few days.
How difficult is it to monitor a process like this?
We have been in touch with the head of the intervention team, and he has promised to keep us updated as to the process. Unfortunately, we can't practically keep in touch with 5,000 schools in the province. We have been in touch with about 14. We visited them last week and none of them had received their books. We followed up with quite a few of them today, and out of the 14, none of them had received their books.
Those books that are being delivered, are they the right books?
Apparently, yes. They are asked to check everything that they have received, and so far those that have received their books did order those books, and so that's going okay. It's just the fact that books are not getting to schools.
I presume after the department failed the Friday deadline, you were in touch with the department. What excuse did they give?
We met with the head of the intervention team on Thursday. We were extremely concerned that the 14 schools we visited hadn't received their books and asked him for an explanation. He said that there had been delays in appointing delivery companies for the 134 circuits, that the data for the orders that had been put in under the previous administration team were incorrect, and so new orders had to be placed, and that process took long, and that even as we spoke, although the trucks were leaving Polokwane to go to the separate district offices with books, not all of the delivery companies had been appointed. I think that they were under a lot of time pressure, but the date of the 15th of June was actually their proposed date on the basis that they could comply very easily.
I mean, given that there are logistical difficulties here and this wide geographical spread, does one have any sympathy at all for the department in this regard? Are you able to say perhaps that they are working as hard as they can?
Jeremy, I think it's a huge task to get books to 5,000 schools, but the books should have been there in January this year. And the fact that we had to go to court after 2 promises which had not been kept makes me lose a bit of sympathy. And the fact that we need to work so hard in monitoring, this is not something that should have been litigated on. This is something that should have happened in time.
Wednesday is the deadline, where they then claim that that remaining 3% of books will be delivered, if that 97% is to be believed. What sort of response, what sort of guarantee, what are you looking for from the department in order for you to satisfy, or for you to be satisfied that they have met the court obligations?
I was in touch with the head of the intervention team this evening, and I told him that unless 100% of the books are delivered, and he has confirmed delivery by Wednesday, we will consider going to court for an order holding the department in contempt.
So assuming you do go back to court, how would the process then unfold? You would hold them in contempt, so what?
There are provisions for committal of the Minister and or the MEC. We would need to consider that very closely and see how the process unfolds from here. It's not something I can predict at the moment, but if it is necessary to follow those strict procedures...
Let me just hear that correctly again. You could conceivably go to court on Wednesday, hold the Minister and various authorities in contempt. Committal means that they could go to jail.
We are considering the process closely, and that's not to say that that's automatically what we will do.
But it could be a consequence.
If things are bad enough, it may be something that we seek.
All right, final question then. Remind us what damage has been done to the pupils, why you went to court in the first place.
Jeremy, they've been without textbooks for 6 months. They've got massive gaps in their syllabus. It's grades R1, 2, 3 and 10 who have all started the new CAP syllabus and have had absolutely no books to work from. The CAP syllabus was introduced to increase learner reliance on textbooks, and so the fact that they've had no textbooks is all the more damaging. And that's why we asked for the delivery of textbooks, but also for the department to file a catch-up plan for extra lessons and extra learner support to try to close those gaps in the curriculum, so that by the time end-of-year exams come in November, the pass rate is better than it would have been.
Where do we stand with the catch-up plan?
We have received the catch-up plan and have a number of concerns about it. We are still getting comments from experts and from educators and principals at the various schools. As we stand, we're not sure that we think it is in compliance with the court order, and if we do need to go back to court on the catch-up plan or to continue to engage with the department outside court, we will do so.
Is it too early to say that this is a year lost for pupils in Limpopo?
I hope not. I don't think that all of the learners that would have moved to the next grade will move to the next grade because of the lengthy delay in the delivery of textbooks, but we will do whatever we can to make that process easier for them.
What about the Eastern Cape?
The Eastern Cape is another huge problem. They have the problem of delivery of workbooks, and there were incorrect workbooks delivered to them. I think there are some overlaps between Limpopo and the Eastern Cape. I know that the Eastern Cape also has problems with post-provisioning, and so many learners are sitting with absolutely no teachers in front of them at all. And it has been that way for almost half of the academic year again. And it's just sad that education in 2 provinces and more is in that state.
Thank you very much for joining us. From Section 27, lawyer Nikki Steyn.
To account for causing what could be long-term damage to the pupils of Limpopo. So far, the Basic Education Minister's answers just aren't adding up. After claiming that almost all the textbooks had been delivered by Monday, the minister is now saying she's been misled. The question now, however, is who is going to accept responsibility? COSATU seems to think officials are far too lenient on the culprits.
It's bad enough that it required a court order to compel the education authorities to do what they should have done in January. But for them still, now a month after the court order, not to have complied with it, is absolutely intolerable. And that's why we're saying that all the people responsible should be dismissed.
This Friday's fact-finding mission will show just how serious the minister is about solving Limpopo's latest education tragedy. Otherwise, the minister will be remembered as an official who refused to act even when compelled by the court. Tabang Masanabo, E-News, Limpopo.
In an open letter to the minister, NGOs say the meeting will be an opportunity for the department to reach a working agreement beyond the courts.
I think it is a problem, but the problem is not necessarily a crisis.
A defiant education minister who is frustrating NGOs. After months of escalating problems, including lack of textbooks, proper sanitation and poor infrastructure in schools, they've had enough and in a letter have urged Motshekga to own up to these systematic failures.
I don't think you can deny that there is a crisis in education. I think the fact that 2 provincial departments are under administration in terms of Section 100 of the Constitution illustrate very clearly that certainly those departments and all education departments are under serious threat and serious crisis.
The NGOs also believe the department can't get things done.
Just lack of implementation by state departments, and it looks good on paper. We're all quite happy with court orders, and you come out of it and you're sitting a month down the line and people are without a textbook. Still, it's quite shocking and it's disappointing.
For Section 27 and other NGOs, this letter to the Minister of Basic Education is a desperate attempt to improve an education system in crisis. They also hope their meeting with Angie Motshekga will persuade her to sort out her department. If that fails, court action remains a last resort. Tabang Masanabo, E-News, Johannesburg.
Books to all Limpopo schools, and the 3rd deadline is looming. The department's adamant it'll deliver before the clock strikes midnight. Some schools are still without textbooks 6 months into the academic year. If officials fail again, they could find themselves back in court. A High Court had agreed with NGO Section 27 that the failure to provide textbooks violated the Constitution. Well, Nikki Steyn is an attorney for that NGO Section 27. She's with us this evening in studio. Nikki, welcome. The department insists that it is on track with the deliveries. It'll meet that deadline by midnight. Is that what you've heard?
It's what we've heard from the department. In terms of our settlement agreement that we reached last Thursday, they undertook to provide us with regular progress reports. We've had some difficulty in getting all of those progress reports. While there has been informal confirmation that 100% of books have been delivered to primary schools and almost 100% to high schools, it's unfortunately not what we're seeing on the ground. We have spoken to a couple of primary schools that have received no books at all. High schools reflected in the department's reports as having received 100% are still waiting for books or have received nothing at all either.
We're also hearing, well, the DA says in Polokwane delivery trucks arrived at some schools and no one had been instructed to receive them, so they turned them back.
Part of what we agreed with the department was that, first of all, they were to send a circular to all principals to let them know when they were to deliver books so that the principals could make themselves available. Part of it was also so that the principals could let learners know when they could come and collect their books so that at least they had them over the school holidays.
Is it true that some schools didn't receive a full consignment, although they did get some textbooks?
That's correct. We were told by the department that books were actually packaged per school, and so if they had received one book, they would have received all of their books. That's certainly not what we're hearing from the schools. Many of them have books for some subjects, but not for others. Many of them have the wrong quantity of textbooks. And we've actually called for the department to arrange for an independent verification of the results. Their progress reports seem to contain some inaccurate information, and as long as the schools don't have all of the books they need, there hasn't been compliance with the court order.
Come midnight, if those books haven't been delivered as agreed to between you and the department, will you go back to court?
We'll need to assess the circumstances and the extent of non-compliance, and we will have to do some of our own investigations, but of course we can't follow up with 5,000 schools. Based on the fact, though, that we had been given 2 undertakings before we launched the litigation against them, and since then there's been non-compliance with the court order and non-compliance with 2 other undertakings, it may be a likely option.
And you've been speaking to the department over this issue for quite a while, but we know the National Education Department has taken over Limpopo's functions because of the inefficiencies there. Where is the problem in the department? What is preventing this department from being run successfully, in your opinion?
It's not clear at all. I think there is a lot of finger-pointing between the national and provincial governments. Although the Section 101B intervention says that national must take over completely, there is some power struggle between national and provincial and some resistance by the provincial.
Last night to deliver books to thousands of schools.
Officials do say the warehouse is empty. All books are either at the schools or will be delivered soon. But some school principals claim this is not true, as they are still waiting for their books. A report detailing the book deliveries will be released later today.
Time's up for the Department of Basic Education. The deadline has lapsed for officials to deliver all late textbooks to schools in Limpopo. Rights group Section 27 won its court case forcing the department to make final deliveries by Wednesday midnight. Officials say most books have been delivered, but some principals weren't available to accept them.
The minister just signed off the report, and I think it will be proper and really caters to Section 27, which is the body that took us to court, that we give them the report first, and after they've commented on the report, we're releasing the report to all South Africans.
But many school principals are saying the deliveries didn't arrive at all.
Part of the settlement agreement reached with the department was that they would send out a circular to all principals to tell them to make themselves available to collect the textbooks. And also for principals to instruct their learners to go to school this morning to collect their textbooks so that they had them over the school holidays. And so, to me, it doesn't seem to be a valid excuse that the principals are refusing to take delivery.
Opposition groups say it seems clear the department didn't meet the deadline, and Minister Angie Motshekga has failed Limpopo pupils.
The minister has been a champion on this particular issue. It's just unfortunate that the minister, who is not responsible for day-to-day administrative issues, has been asked to resign because it's not her responsibility to deal with things.
In May, the North Gauteng High Court ruled the department's textbook failure violated the constitutional rights of the pupils affected. Many, including the SA Democratic Teachers Union, are now demanding immediate intervention to resolve what they insist is a crisis.